Hello and welcome to English with Rambo. Today is a very special day. It is the birthday of Aung San Suu Kyi, one of the most well-known and respected women in the world. She is a symbol of peace, courage, and the long fight for democracy in Myanmar. Her story is full of strength, sacrifice, and hope. On this important day, we want to share her life story with you in simple English, so you can both learn English and learn about a woman who changed history. Aung San Suu Kyi was born on June 19th, and her life has inspired millions of people around the world. She is known as the Lady in Myanmar. She spent many years under house arrest because she wanted to bring freedom and democracy to her country. Even when she was not free, her spirit stayed strong. She chose peace over violence and hope over fear. In this story, you will read about her childhood, her time studying abroad, her return to Myanmar, and her leadership in difficult times. You will learn new words, new grammar, and most importantly, you will learn about a true hero. This is not just a lesson in English. It is a lesson in courage, patience, patience and belief in doing what is right. So, join us today as we begin this special journey through the life of Aung San Suu Kyi. Happy birthday to the Lady, and thank you for showing the world the power of peaceful resistance. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Daughter of a Hero. Aung San Suu Kyi was born on June 19, 1945 in Rangoon, the capital city of Burma, now called Yangon, Myanmar. She was born during a very important time in her country's history. The world was at the end of World War II, and many countries were fighting for freedom and independence. Her father, General Aung San, was a national hero. He was the man who helped Burma begin its journey to freedom from British rule. General Aung San was a strong and brave leader. He believed that the people of Burma should decide their own future. He worked hard to unite the country and bring different groups together. He was young, intelligent, and full of passion. People respected him because he wanted peace, justice, and equality for all. When Suu Kyi was just 2 years old, something very sad happened. Her father, General Aung San, was assassinated. He was killed by political rivals on July 19, 1947, just a few months before Burma became independent. The country mourned his death. He became a symbol of freedom and sacrifice. Even though Suu Kyi was too young to remember him well, his spirit and ideas stayed with her for the rest of her life. Suu Kyi grew up in a house filled with memories of her father. Her mother, King Kyi, was also a strong and intelligent woman. After her husband's death, she raised Suu Kyi and her 2 brothers alone. King Kyi later became a famous diplomat. She was one of the first women in Burma to work in a high government position. She also served as the ambassador to India. Suu Kyi learned many things by watching her mother work with strength and grace. As a young girl, Suu Kyi loved to read and learn. She was curious and thoughtful. She asked many questions and paid attention to the world around her. People who knew her said she was calm, polite, and serious. But inside, she had a strong heart and a clear mind. When she was a teenager, Suu Kyi moved with her mother to India, where her mother worked as ambassador. Living in India gave Suu Kyi the chance to learn about different cultures and ideas. She studied at a famous school in New Delhi and met many important people. She saw how leaders could make good or bad choices. These experiences helped shape her ideas about democracy, freedom, and human rights. Suu Kyi was proud to be the daughter of General Aung San. People in Burma also looked at her with respect because of her father's name. But Suu Kyi did not want to live only in his shadow. She wanted to understand his dream and carry it forward in her own way. Later, she would say, "My father died for his country. I want to live for it." These words show her deep love for Burma and her strong desire to help its people. Even though she spent many years abroad, her heart always belonged to her homeland. The early years of Suu Kyi's life were shaped by 2 powerful forces, the heroic memory of her father and the quiet strength of her mother. These 2 people gave her the foundation she needed to become a leader one day. From a young age, she learned the meaning of sacrifice, duty, and service. She also learned that being a leader is not about power or fame. It is about helping others and standing up for what is right even when it is hard. Her father had died for his beliefs. Her mother had lived with dignity and courage, and Suu Kyi would one day follow both their paths. As she grew older, Suu Kyi continued to study and grow. She would later travel to the United Kingdom, study at Oxford University, and live a quiet life abroad. But the story of her father never left her heart. It was always with her, like a quiet voice calling her home. The daughter of a hero was slowly becoming a woman of destiny. Chapter 2: A Life Between Worlds. After her father's death, Aung San Suu Kyi's life began to change in many ways. Her mother, Khin Kyi, became more involved in public service. In the late 1950s, she was chosen to serve as Burma's ambassador to India and Nepal. This was a big honor, and it also meant the family had to move to New Delhi, the capital of India. Suu Kyi was still a teenager when she moved to India. At first, it was not easy. India was different from Burma. The language, culture, food, and people were all new to her. But Suu Kyi was smart and open-minded. She adapted quickly. She studied at Lady Shri Ram College, one of the best schools in India. There she learned to speak English fluently and became interested in world politics and philosophy. During her time in India, Suu Kyi saw poverty, injustice, and inequality. But she also saw strong leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, who believed in democracy and peace. These experiences had a deep effect on her. She began to think more seriously about freedom, justice, and the role of government. Even as she lived in India, Suu Kyi never forgot her roots. She often read books about her father and Burma's history. She kept her Burmese identity close to her heart. She lived in one world, but always carried another inside her. This is why her life would always be a life between worlds, between East and West, between family and duty, between silence and action. In the 1960s, after finishing school in India, Suu Kyi moved again, this time to England. She was accepted to study at Oxford University, one of the most famous universities in the world. She studied philosophy, politics and economics, PPE, at St Hugh's College. At Oxford, she met students from many different countries. She made friends, attended lectures, and enjoyed quiet walks through the beautiful campus. Life in Oxford was peaceful. It was a place where she could think deeply and grow as a person. She read books by famous thinkers like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., who believed in non-violent resistance. Their ideas would later become important in her own fight for democracy. Suu Kyi was not just a student. She also worked part-time to support herself. She learned to cook, clean, and take care of her own needs. She was independent, disciplined, and humble. Many people at Oxford remember her as quiet but strong, gentle but clear in her thinking. After finishing her degree, Suu Kyi worked in different places. She worked at the United Nations in New York, where she helped with questions about budget and public service. She also did more studies in Japan and Bhutan. During these years, she learned about many cultures and political systems. She began to see the world more clearly and to see her own country with new eyes. In 1972, Suu Kyi married Dr. Michael Arris, a British scholar who studied Asian history. They had 2 sons, Alexander and Kim, and lived a quiet family life in the United Kingdom. For many years, Suu Kyi focused on being a good mother and wife, but even then, her heart stayed connected to Burma. She taught her children about their Burmese heritage. She cooked Burmese food at home and spoke the language with them. She also continued to follow news from Burma and worried about the military rule and lack of freedom in her homeland. Even though she was far away, the voice of her father seemed to whisper to her through the years. He had once said that the people of Burma deserved a life of dignity and choice. That dream was still not true. The country had been under military control since 1962. People were afraid to speak. There was no free press. Many students and activists had been arrested. Suu Kyi was living in a free country, but her own people were not. This thought stayed in her mind like a quiet storm. In 1988, her mother, Kin Kyi, became seriously ill. Suu Kyi returned to Burma to take care of her. It had been many years since she had walked the streets of Rangoon. She found a country that was hurting and broken. People were poor, tired, and afraid. But there was also something else, a desire for change. Suu Kyi had returned home as a daughter. But soon she would be called to serve as something more. She had lived between two worlds for many years. Now those two worlds would meet. Her education, her experiences, her quiet strength, and her deep love for her country, all of it had prepared her for what would come next. She was no longer just the daughter of a hero. She was about to become a leader in her own right. Chapter 3. The Call of Home. In 1988, Aung San Suu Kyi returned to Burma for a personal reason. Her mother, Kin Kyi, was very sick. Suu Kyi came back to take care of her. At first, she planned to stay only for a short time. Her husband and children were still in England, and she expected to return to her quiet family life. But life had other plans. When Suu Kyi arrived in Rangoon, she found a country full of pain. The people were poor, the economy was broken, the streets were quiet. But fear was everywhere. Burma had been ruled by a military government since 1962. The people had no freedom of speech, no free elections, and no human rights. Many young people, especially students, were angry and wanted change. In March 1988, student protests began in Rangoon. They were angry about police violence, high prices, and a lack of jobs. At first, the protests were small, but they grew bigger and stronger each day. People from all walks of life, teachers, monks, workers, and even some soldiers joined the protests. They were asking for democracy and a better future. The military responded with violence. Soldiers shot at protesters. Many people were killed or arrested. The streets of Rangoon were filled with fear and blood. The whole country was in crisis. Suu Kyi saw all of this. She had come home to care for her mother, but she could not stay silent. She had studied democracy. She had read about non-violence. And she was the daughter of General Aung San, the man who gave his life for the country's freedom. Now she felt a deep responsibility. The people needed a voice. She decided to speak. On August the 26th, 1988, Suu Kyi gave her first public speech at the Shwedagon Pagoda in Rangoon. Over 500,000 people came to hear her. She stood on a small stage wearing a simple outfit and spoke with calm but powerful words. She told the crowd that the people of Burma had the right to live in peace, to speak freely, and to choose their leaders. She called for non-violence, unity, and democracy. It was a historic moment. For the first time in many years, people had hope. They saw not just the daughter of a hero, but a new leader, a leader with intelligence, courage, and a strong heart. After the speech, Suu Kyi became the face of the democracy movement. Along with other activists, she helped form the National League for Democracy, NLD, a new political party. The NLD promised to fight for free elections, human rights, and justice. Suu Kyi became the General Secretary of the party. Her calm voice and clear ideas gave people strength. But the military government saw her as a threat. They did not want to lose power. In July 1989, they put Suu Kyi under house arrest. She was not allowed to leave her home. She could not meet with her supporters. Soldiers watched her day and night, but even from inside her house, she remained strong. She refused to leave Burma, even when her husband and children were far away. The government told her that if she left, she could go free, but she would not be allowed to return. Suu Kyi chose to stay. She said, "I cannot leave my people. They are not free, so I will not be free." During her house arrest, people continued to support her. They wrote letters, shared her words, and spread her message of peace and democracy around the world. People began to notice her. She was compared to leaders like Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi. In 1990, the military allowed a national election. The NLD won more than 80% of the seats. It was a clear message. The people wanted change, but the military refused to give up power. They ignored the results and kept Suu Kyi under arrest. The dream of democracy was delayed once again. Still, Suu Kyi did not give up. She spent many years alone, cut off from her family and friends, but her spirit remained strong. She read books, listened to the radio, and wrote speeches. Her simple home became a symbol of peaceful resistance. Her return to Burma in 1988 was not just a visit, it was a turning point in her life. She had answered the call of home, and that call changed everything. Aung San Suu Kyi had stepped into history. She had become more than a daughter, more than a mother, more than a wife. She had become the voice of a nation. Chapter 4: Voices of Freedom. The year 1988 was one of the most important years in modern Burmese history. It was a year full of pain, courage, and hope. The people of Burma, after years of living under military rule, stood up to demand freedom. Their voices were strong and clear. They wanted a new life, a life of democracy. And among those voices, one voice rose above the rest, the voice of Aung San Suu Kyi. After returning to Burma to care for her sick mother, Suu Kyi watched the country fall into deep unrest. Prices of basic goods had gone up, schools and hospitals were not working well, the economy had collapsed, and the people were struggling to survive. The government, led by General Ne Win, ruled with fear. People were arrested without reason. Speaking against the military was dangerous, but the people had had enough. In March 1988, students in Rangoon began protesting. They demanded justice after a fellow student was beaten to death by the police. Their voices sparked a flame that soon spread across the whole country. Thousands of people, young and old, rich and poor, joined the movement. They were tired of being afraid. They wanted to be heard. These peaceful protests became known as the 1988 Uprising, or 8888 Uprising, because one of the largest marches happened on August 8, 1988. 8888. On that day, millions of people across Burma marched together. They carried signs, sang songs, and held each other's hands. For the first time in years, the streets were full of hope. But the military answered the protests with guns. Soldiers opened fire on crowds. Thousands of people were killed. Blood ran in the streets, but the spirit of the people did not die. At this turning point, Suu Kyi made a decision that would change her life forever. She could no longer remain quiet. On August 26, 1988, she gave a powerful speech at the Shwedagon Pagoda, the heart of Buddhist life in Burma. Standing in front of 500,000 people, Suu Kyi spoke clearly and calmly. She asked for peaceful change, freedom of speech, and respect for human rights. She said, "The revolution is not about power. It is about truth, justice, and the will of the people." That day, the people saw her not just as the daughter of General Aung San, but as their own leader. She became the symbol of hope. Just weeks later, along with other activists and thinkers, Suu Kyi helped form a political party called the National League for Democracy, NLD. The NLD stood for non-violence, truth and freedom. Its goal was to bring democracy to Burma through peaceful and legal means. Suu Kyi became the General Secretary of the party. She travelled across the country, visiting villages, towns and cities. She met with farmers, monks, students and factory workers. She listened to their stories and shared her vision. People called her Dasu with love and respect. She never used bodyguards or fancy cars. She walked among the people, often in simple clothes and with flowers in her hair. Her speeches were full of kindness and courage. She always told the people to stay peaceful, even when the government was cruel. She reminded them that change would come, but only if they stayed united and strong. The military watched her closely. They were afraid of her popularity. On July 20th, 1989, they put her under house arrest. They said she was a danger to the country, but the people knew the truth. Suu Kyi was a danger only to those who ruled with fear and lies. Even under arrest, Suu Kyi's voice did not fade. The NLD continued its work. The party members faced threats, prison, and torture, but they did not give up. They believed in the dream of democracy that Suu Kyi had given them. In 1990, the military surprisingly allowed a general election. The people were excited. They came out in large numbers to vote. The result was clear. The NLD won more than 80% of the seats. It was a huge victory, but instead of respecting the vote, the military rejected the results. They refused to give up power and kept Suu Kyi under arrest. The world watched in shock. Many countries called for her release. She became a symbol of peaceful resistance, like Nelson Mandela in South Africa or Gandhi in India. In 1991, while still under house arrest, Suu Kyi was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The prize money was used to help the Burmese people. She did not accept the award in person, but the world heard her message loud and clear. The 1988 uprising and the founding of the NLD marked the birth of a new Burma. It was not yet free, but it had found its voice. And that voice, soft yet strong, belonged to Aung San Suu Kyi. Chapter 5: The Iron Gate Closes. The year was 1989, and Burma was full of tension. After the powerful speech at Shwedagon Pagoda and the founding of the National League for Democracy, NLD, Aung San Suu Kyi had become the most important voice for change in the country. The people loved her. They believed in her dream of democracy. But the military leaders were afraid. They saw Suu Kyi as a threat to their power. Her growing popularity made them nervous. On July 20th, 1989, the military made a decision. They would silence her. Soldiers arrived at her house on University Avenue in Rangoon. They closed the gates and placed guards outside. Suu Kyi was now under house arrest. There were no trials, no charges. She was simply locked inside her home. From that day, she could no longer meet with her party members, speak to the public, or travel outside. Her life of movement and action had suddenly become quiet and lonely. Suu Kyi's house was large but simple. It was near the peaceful waters of Inya Lake, surrounded by trees and flowers. But now it felt like a prison. The iron gate at the front was always locked. Soldiers watched her day and night. They controlled who could come and go. Even letters and phone calls were blocked. Her husband, Michael Aris, and her 2 sons were still in England. The military told her she could leave Burma at any time, but if she left, she would never be allowed to return. It was a difficult choice. She missed her family deeply. Her children were growing up without her, but she stayed. She said, "I must stay with my people. I cannot leave them in their time of need." You see, at first, Suu Kyi was completely alone. No visits, no messages, no news from the outside world. For someone who had lived such an active life, the silence was painful, but she refused to let it break her spirit. She turned her prison into a place of peace and strength. Every day, Suu Kyi followed a simple routine. She read books, listened to the radio, and meditated. She kept her mind clear and focused. She studied the lives of great leaders like Gandhi and Mandela, and their words gave her hope. She knew she was not alone in her struggle. Sometimes she played the piano. The soft music echoed through the house and reminded her of beauty and grace. She also kept a journal, writing down her thoughts, her dreams, and her ideas for a better Burma. Even in silence, her voice stayed alive. Outside the gates, the world did not forget her. The NLD continued to work, though many members were arrested or watched closely. The people of Burma still believed in her. They whispered her name with respect. Her photo was kept in hidden places, and her speeches were shared in secret. In 1990, the military allowed an election, thinking they could control the result. But to their surprise, the NLD won more than 80% of the seats. It was a clear sign. The people wanted change. They had voted for freedom, for justice, and for Suu Kyi, but the military refused to accept the result. They ignored the voice of the people and held on to power. Suu Kyi remained under house arrest. The military hoped time would make people forget her, but the opposite happened. Her silence made her stronger in the eyes of the world. In 1991, Aung San Suu Kyi was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her peaceful struggle for democracy. She could not attend the ceremony, but her son Alexander accepted the prize on her behalf in Norway. In his speech, he said she would not accept a life of comfort while her people were not free. The prize money was used to set up a health and education program for the people of Burma. International leaders, writers, and human rights groups praised Suu Kyi. She became a global symbol of courage and non-violence. People called her the Lady of Burma. Her name was spoken in the same breath as Gandhi, Mandela, and Martin Luther King Jr. But still, the Iron Gate remained closed. Over the years, Suu Kyi faced many health problems. She was sometimes allowed visits from her doctor, but even that was limited. Letters from her husband were often blocked. And in 1999, while still under house arrest, she received heartbreaking news. Her husband, Michael, had died of cancer in England. The government had refused his final request to see her one last time. Despite the pain, Suu Kyi remained calm. Her sadness was deep, but her love for Burma was even deeper. She believed that real freedom came from within. Even though she was not free on the outside, her spirit was never imprisoned. The Iron Gate stayed closed for 6 long years until 1995, when she was finally released. But her journey was far from over. Freedom in Burma had not yet arrived. Still, Aung San Suu Kyi had shown the world something powerful, that even in silence, even in isolation, a voice of truth and peace can still be heard. Chapter 6: Silent Strength. After 6 long years of house arrest, Aung San Suu Kyi was finally released in 1995. The Iron Gate on University Avenue opened and the people cheered. But even though she was free to walk outside her home, the country was still under military rule. The generals still held power, and Burma was far from free. Suu Kyi knew that the real fight for democracy had only just begun. She walked out of her house quietly, without anger or revenge. She smiled and waved to the people, her heart full of peace and hope. She did not call for violence. Instead, she called for patience, kindness, and strong hearts. Her weapon was not a gun, it was truth. And her way was non-violence. The military leaders hoped that 6 years in isolation would weaken her spirit. But it did the opposite. Suu Kyi had become even stronger. Her words were calm but powerful. She continued to speak about freedom, justice, and human rights. She believed that the power of love and truth was greater than fear. She began meeting with other members of the National League for Democracy, NLD. Together, they made plans for the future. They talked about how to bring democracy to Burma through peaceful means. They knew it would be difficult, but Suu Kyi reminded them that real change takes time. The government continued to block her. They refused to let her travel freely. They watched her every move. Soldiers followed her wherever she went, but still she continued her peaceful resistance. She held small gatherings in her yard. She gave speeches from behind the gates of her home. People came quietly, listening from the street or from nearby houses. Her voice gave them courage. Sometimes Suu Kyi tried to visit people in other towns, but the government would stop her car. Soldiers would block the road. They would try to force her to turn back. In one famous moment, Suu Kyi was on her way to meet NLD supporters when her car was stopped by armed soldiers. A soldier pointed a gun at her, but she did not turn around. She told the driver to keep going. She was ready to die if needed. That moment showed the world her bravery. Her non-violent resistance was inspired by leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. Like them, Suu Kyi believed that peace is more powerful than hate. She once said, "If you want to bring change, you must be prepared to suffer for it peacefully." The military tried to silence her again. In 2000, she was placed under house arrest for a second time. Once again, she lived behind the Iron Gate. But this time, the people were watching more closely. The world had not forgotten her. Her time under house arrest was hard, but she stayed strong. She read books, meditated, and kept her mind sharp. She stayed connected with the NLD as much as she could. She was often cut off from the world, but her heart stayed connected to her people. In 2002, she was released once again, the streets filled with smiling faces. People cheered, waved flowers, and cried tears of joy. Daw Suu Kyi gave speeches of peace and unity. She told her supporters to stay calm, to believe in justice, and to never give up. But the military was not ready to let go of power. In 2003, after one of her trips to the countryside, her convoy was attacked in a place called Depayan. It was a planned attack by people connected to the government. Many NLD members were hurt, and some were killed. Suu Kyi survived, but it was a dark moment. After the attack, the government placed her under house arrest once again. This time she would stay there for many more years. The Iron Gate closed once more, but her silent strength never faded. While she was locked away, the people continued to support her. They held quiet ceremonies, released balloons with her picture, and whispered her name with love. Even though she was not on the streets, her spirit was everywhere. Outside of Burma, people around the world kept speaking her name. She was given awards and honors. Writers, musicians, teachers, and leaders spoke about her courage. She became a symbol of peaceful resistance. In 2007, monks across Burma led protests against the military government. These protests became known as the Saffron Revolution because of the color of the monks' robes. Once again, the people were rising up peacefully, and once again the government answered with violence. But the movement reminded the world that the fight for freedom in Burma was still alive. Throughout all these years, Suu Kyi never called for hate. She never asked for violence. She stayed true to her belief that real change must come through peace. Her silent strength became her greatest power. Even when she could not speak, her message was clear. Even when she could not move, her spirit reached far. She taught the world that courage is not about shouting the loudest or fighting with fists. Courage is staying calm in the face of fear. Courage is holding on to your truth even when you are alone. Aung San Suu Kyi's silent strength lit a candle of hope in the dark. And that candle, even in the storm, never went out. Chapter 8, Letters, Songs and Hope. Aung San Suu Kyi spent many years under house arrest. During this time, she was separated from her family, friends, and the people she loved. The iron gates closed around her like a heavy wall. But even in this loneliness, she found ways to stay connected with hope, with music, and with the outside world. Though the military government tried to isolate her, they could not stop her spirit from reaching out. One of the strongest ways she stayed connected was through letters. Suu Kyi loved to write. Letters were her voice when she could not speak freely. She wrote to her sons, to friends, and to supporters. Her letters showed her feelings, her love, her sadness, and her hope for a better future. Her sons, Alexander and Kim, wrote back too. They told her about their lives in England, about school and friends, and about how proud they were of her. These letters gave Suu Kyi strength. Even though she was far from them, their words brought comfort. The letters were like small windows to the world outside the Iron Gate. Not all letters were allowed through. The government censored many messages, trying to keep her silent. But Suu Kyi's friends helped by sharing her letters with the world. They translated them and published them so people everywhere could read her thoughts. Her words touched millions and inspired people to keep fighting for freedom in Burma. Besides letters, music was another way Suu Kyi kept hope alive. She loved to sing and play the piano. Music helped her relax and remember happier times. She often sang traditional Burmese songs, songs about peace and love. Music was a language that crossed walls and borders. Even in silence, music spoke loud and clear. Her favorite songs told stories of courage and patience. Sometimes her visitors heard her humming softly. Her voice was quiet but full of feeling. These songs became symbols of her quiet strength and her belief in peace. Outside Burma, many musicians and artists learned about Suu Kyi's story. They wrote songs, poems, and paintings to honor her. People held concerts and events in her name. Music became a way for people around the world to show their support and share her message. Hope was the most important thing that kept Suu Kyi going. Even when the military tried to break her spirit, she believed in a better future. She dreamed of a free Burma where people could speak, vote, and live with dignity. Her hope was not just for herself, but for all the people who suffered under the military government. She said many times, "We must never lose hope. Change will come. It is slow, but it will come." This message gave courage to millions who faced fear every day. Suu Kyi also found hope in the actions of ordinary people. Many Burmese continued to support her quietly. They held small meetings, shared her speeches, and helped each other stay strong. Even though many lived in fear, they believed her message of peace. International friends and organizations helped too. Human rights groups worked hard to keep attention on Burma. They spoke about Suu Kyi in the United Nations and other world meetings. Their support helped remind the military rulers that the world was watching. During her detention, Suu Kyi was also given several international awards. These honors were a sign that her peaceful fight was respected everywhere. Each award sent a message. The world believed in justice and human rights, and they believed in her. One of the most important awards was the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought, given by the European Parliament. This prize recognized Suu Kyi's courage and her peaceful struggle for democracy. Even though she could not travel to receive it, the honor was a powerful symbol. The years of detention were difficult and painful, but Suu Kyi's connection through letters, songs, and hope helped her survive. Her story reached people around the world, and she became a symbol of peaceful resistance everywhere. Her life showed that even when you are locked away, your voice can still be heard. Even when you face great challenges, hope can keep you strong. Aung San Suu Kyi taught the world that courage is not always loud. It can be quiet, steady, and full of love. Her letters, her songs, and her hope were like light shining through the darkest times. They remind us all that peace and freedom are worth waiting for and worth fighting for without hate or violence. Chapter 9. A Flicker of Change. For many years, Aung San Suu Kyi lived under house arrest. The military government ruled Burma with strict control, but in the early 2010s, small changes began to happen. These changes gave hope to the people. They showed that freedom might come one day. The world watched closely as Burma started to open a little. The military government knew it could no longer keep the country closed forever. Economic problems and international pressure made the generals think differently. They wanted to improve relations with other countries. They wanted to attract money and business. In 2010, the military government held a general election. Many people thought it was only for show. They believed the military would still keep power. Aung San Suu Kyi was not allowed to run in this election, but her party, the National League for Democracy, NLD, prepared quietly for the future. The election gave the military some control over a new civilian government. However, the military still kept strong power behind the scenes. Many activists and citizens wanted more real change, but even this small step was important. In 2011, the military government released many political prisoners, including some members of the NLD. It was a sign that things were starting to change. The government also allowed Suu Kyi to travel freely inside the country. It was the first time in many years she could move without soldiers watching her all the time. People were excited and hopeful. They believed Suu Kyi would soon be free. And in November 2010, she was finally released from house arrest after nearly 15 years in total. The gates opened and she walked out to greet thousands of supporters. Her release was a moment of joy for the people. They lined the streets to see her. Many held signs and flowers. They shouted her name, "Aung San Suu Kyi! Aung San Suu Kyi!" Her smile was bright, but she knew the real work was just beginning. After her release, Suu Kyi began traveling across Burma. She met people from many towns and villages. She listened to their stories and shared her vision for the country. She said, "Our nation needs peace, democracy, and development. We must work together." In April 2012, the NLD won a surprise victory in a by-election. Suu Kyi herself was elected to the Burmese parliament. This was a huge step forward. For the first time in decades, the people had a real chance to influence their government through peaceful means. Suu Kyi used her new position to speak about human rights, education, and healthcare. She pushed for laws to protect freedom of speech and to improve life for all citizens. But the military still held much power, especially in the army and government. Even with challenges, this period was a flicker of hope. The world saw Burma moving toward democracy. Suu Kyi's message of peace and unity inspired many people to believe that change was possible. The military government started to open the country more. Foreign leaders visited Burma, the economy improved, trade increased, new businesses opened, more people could speak freely. The press became less controlled. These were all signs of a changing nation. However, there were still problems.